Hi, I'm Dr. Thom Mayer, and you're listening to A Shark's Perspective.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. I'm Kenneth Kinney, but friends call me Shark. I'm a keynote speaker, a strategist, a shark diver, host of this show, and your chief shark officer. So I took a few weeks off because I was sick. You can still hear it in the raspiness of my voice. But I saw a doctor. At least I interviewed one for the show. And what an interview. I saw him speak a few weeks ago and had to get him on the show. Really good speaker, by the way. And there's so many lessons to learn from today's guest about leadership, corporate culture, medical advances, burnout, humility, and so much more. Dr. Thom Mayer is the medical director for the NFL Players Association, the executive vice president of leadership for LogixHealth, founder of Best Practices, Inc., the 2018 winner of the James D. Mills Outstanding Contribution to Emergency Medicine Award, nominated to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, named by USA Today as one of the 100 most important people in the NFL. He's led a mobile team to Ukraine in 2022 to train medical personnel during the war. He served as the command physician at the Pentagon Rescue Operation, has served on 3 Defense Science Board task forces advising the Secretary of Defense. He's an author of books including Battling Healthcare Burnout, and he was also the originator of the NFL Concussion Guidelines program. And on this episode, we will discuss the NFL, service, when leadership is a noun and when leading is a verb, the We Suite, 9/11, CTEs, Damar Hamlin, and 3 great resuscitation doctors, Hall of Fame Gold Jackets, physician burnout, dealing with stress, leading a mobile team to Ukraine, a usual suspect, Roger Goodell's middle name, great football movies, best G of all time, what should Tua do, and a lot more. So let's tune into Dr. Mayer with yours truly, Dr. Shark, on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Thom, welcome to A Shark's Perspective. If you will, tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date.
Well, my background is, small town Midwest, growing up, World War II veteran father and a great mother, not rich in finances, but rich in integrity and heritage and all that. And grew up wanting to be an NFL player and played football from 3rd grade through college, and then strangely enough played 1 year in medical school, tried out with the Bears and the Vikings, and they informed me that except for I was really good, except I lacked one thing, which was, what was it? Oh, talent. I didn't have any talent. So ended up going to medical school, drawn to acute critical care, the sickest of the sick, and therefore went into emergency medicine and sports medicine, became the medical director for the NFL Players Association in 2001, and have been doing that since, but have led for me at least, maybe not for your listeners, an interesting life, a life in crisis, having led I was a command physician at the Pentagon on 9/11, inhalational anthrax incident commander in that same year. Obviously, we've led in the NFL Players Association through COVID, concussion, multiple injury issues, field turf now that we're dealing with, as well as forming a highly successful emergency physician group. So I've been very fortunate that when crisis occurs, people pick up the phone and say, come help us. So the life in crisis has suited me very well.
I had the pleasure of seeing you speak a few weeks ago. It was outstanding. And you talked about everything from medicine to resilience to burnout to a lot of leadership principles. Thought it was great, but I want to start with football. And if you think about the conversations today that we have about players' health, especially with concussions, you were the originator of the NFL's Concussions Guideline program, and that changed the nature of the way we diagnose and talk about this a lot. But now that that's improved, where would you as a physician like to see that conversation continue to go and grow?
Well, we finished new NFL physician training yesterday in San Francisco at Levi's Stadium. And one of the points I made to them is you have to change culture if you're going to change action. From our conversations, and it's such a privilege to be on your show. Thanks for having me. That I believe that leadership is worthless, but leading is priceless, which is counterintuitive to a lot of people. But at the same time, leadership is a noun. It's just something you say. But leading is a verb. It's something you do. And so as we move the culture of both concussion in football, injury in football, there's 2,500 NFL players every year. If you look at the total number of people in the roster, there's 7,000 injuries, half of which are missed time injuries. So the injury rate in the NFL is over 100%. You'd say, well, mathematically, that doesn't make sense, but it means that many of our players are being injured multiple times per year. So I think where we're going is when I look at a slide that shows us, even if we have injury reduction, concussions actually bumped up last year. My question is, why not half? Why not half? Why couldn't we have half of that number of concussions? And one of the things I always love to say is, what would have to be true? When someone presents me with a problem, an issue, doc, I need your help, it's what would have to be true in order for you to attain that vision of why not half. So as you know, from your experience, personal experience, and your speaking experience, people, when you tell people the way we're working isn't working, they don't always want to hear that. They know that, they feel that in their day-to-day lives. But to come in, particularly at the C-suite level, and say the way we're working isn't working, that's why we have so much burnout and frustration, all that. It's not a criticism of the system. It's a criticism that the system is. People ask me, or ask them, who's your greatest competitor? Who's your biggest competitor? And I listen to what they have to say, but I always say, I don't think so. Your biggest competitor is yourself. Your biggest competitor is what you could be, but have not yet done. And that's not a criticism of us or self-loathing or anything like that. It's simply saying, man, there's a world out there. You know that. I mean, you're a diver. You love swimming with sharks. You just never know what you're going to see. You never know what you're going to encounter. And same should be true of the way we live our lives.
As I was thinking about this beforehand, we've always had issues with concussions. I remember that in movies years ago about football, but it's really become front and center now because of a lot of players. But a lot of the conversation in the past was torn ACLs ruining somebody's career. Now it's much more traumatic. And if you think of what happened with Damar Hamlin, could you have seen any different way that could have been handled from the NFL or from the team's aspect? It stopped the world, and in a good, very positive way, we saw how medicine could help treat something that we couldn't predict. I don't know how you would have predicted something like that.
Well, I think I would just say this: the Damar incident. I've gotten to know Damar. I've gotten to know his family. I was at the bedside. Flew immediately to Cincinnati. D. Smith, my boss, said, "Get your butt on a plane and get there." And of course, I was going to do that anyway. But it's personal in that respect. But the NFL EAP, Emergency Action Plan Program, is, first of all, it's a system, number one. It's not an isolated event, it's a system. Two, the genesis was with the NFL Players Association. I was on the sideline with my previous counterpart with the NFL years ago, and a guy went down hard, and I said, well, who's going to intubate him if he needs to be resuscitated? And they pointed to the end zone. There were paramedics. I love paramedics. I've been an EMS medical director my whole life. Well, you try to put a breathing tube down 380-pound lineman, and that's a nightmare for me. It's one of the most experienced emergency physicians. So we put that in place. We insisted that it be there because to us it wasn't a question of if this is going to happen. It was a question of when this is going to happen. And it's drilled every year. There's certain personnel that have to be there. There's 30 NFL medical staff people and NFL PA people on the sidelines to respond. I went to the stadium and measured, he went down just next to the Bengals logo at about the 49-yard line. Within 20 to 30 yards of him were three of the greatest resuscitation doctors in the world. emergency physicians from University of Cincinnati, Woods Curry, Brett Betts, and Jason McMullen. And they were there, they were prepared, they were experienced, and they were unafraid. And you know what, honestly, I'm going to admit I got cold chills talking about it, because did I save Damar's life? Of course not. But I helped put a system in place which did.
And it does help to have the three of them that seem like they have the speed of Usain Bolt getting to Damar too. It was blink and they were there.
Yeah, they didn't have to think, and that's the unusual thing about emergency critical care physicians, firefighters, police. We had the same thing at the Pentagon. Normal people, and we're anything but normal. You see an explosion, you see a guy fall down on the middle of a football field after a collision, smoke, fire, whatever it is. You run away, to mimic the great Monty Python line. We run into it. And by nature, by training, and those guys, I did a full debrief with them 2 days after Damar was in the hospital, and it was exhilarating. It was nice to see them get the credit they deserve.
Well, you've received so many accolades as a physician. I'm curious, though, what was it like being nominated to the NFL Hall of Fame?
Well, that I'm sure was some hiccup on the nominating. The way that happened, bluntly, Shark, was a bunch of former players said, some of them Hall of Fame players said, Doc, we got all these people in there, we got coaches in there, we got broadcasters in there. Where's the doctor wing? And my answer was, guys, there isn't even a doctor closet in the Hall of Fame. So they took it upon themselves to do that. And I'm sure that will go precisely nowhere. But it was an honor, not because of the writers. I love the writers and have a good relationship with them, I think. But because it was players. It was people I had taken care of who'd said, we got to get Doc in there. But trust me, why don't you take out your schedule and write never for when I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame.
No, I'm looking for you to have that gold jacket on for what you've done for players. It's easily worth it. Let's shift the conversation and talk about it. You've literally written the book on healthcare burnout for physicians. What is the problem that you see today in the scope of what physicians are dealing with on a daily basis?
Well, first of all, as you know, because we talked about it, but for your audience, I believe people have made burnout more complex than it is. That's the reason I wrote the book. To me, it's just, definitions drive solutions. By defining a problem, I should be able to solve the problem. I don't need any ethereal paragraph, chapter, all that. Just tell me how to fix this. So it's a ratio. The numerator is job stressors, and the denominator is adaptive capacity or resiliency. And we'll get into that if you want. So if that's what causes the cardinal symptoms of emotional exhaustion, cynicism, and loss of meaning at work versus loss of meaning in life, depression, then how do I fix it? Well, I fix it by lowering job stressors and increasing adaptive capacity. And that it really is that simple. How can I lower job stressors? And hopefully we're doing both, building our personal and our organizational adaptive capacity in a way that helps us say, let's look forward as opposed to looking back. Let's focus on leading, acting in the active voice, creating culture every day by the actions we do, not in the C-suite, not in the boardroom, but in my case, at the bedside and on the field side in terms of the sports medicine part. And the gratifying thing has been how many people have called me, told me, sent me a note. People actually still occasionally send notes as opposed to email, but saying how much it helped them, because that's all. The only reason I ever talk to anybody is to try to help.
How have you dealt with it in your own career? Being an emergency physician, seeing the worst of the worst, you've also had to wear a lot of that stress. What did you do to deal with it?
Well, certain people are born for stress or trained for stress, or usually, at least in my personal experience, a combination of both, and have that sense that, it's not always going to go well. It's not always, you're not going to save every life. You're not going to turn anger successfully in all cases. And being able to deal with that without internalizing that, meaning deal with it. People talk about the death of a sibling, a death of a child, death of a parent. And how do you ever get over that? Well, you don't get over it. You learn to live with it. And that's true in acute care medicine and emergency medicine as well. And that is, you have to realize that it's not always going to go well, but did you do the best you can? I love doing an exercise when I'm on site with people, and it just shows a slide, simple slide, and says, do the best you can. And I ask people in the audience, what does that say? And then what does that say? Point to another person. What did that say? And the first person might say, do. And the second person might say, do the best. And someone might say, do the best you can. But almost no one says, do the best you can. And I think it's a tragic mistake that we don't put the emphasis on you. Do the best you can. Don't compare yourself to other people, your siblings, the other docs, the other people that work in your environment, the other salesman who's getting prizes and trophies and bonuses and you're not. Do the best you can. And I think that's what I have experienced is in emergency medicine and sports medicine. It's all about life. It's not just healthcare. So, well, this is a healthcare book. It's really a life book. And that's one of the greatest compliments I've gotten from people to say, man, I gave this to everybody I could find because it's going to help them as well.
You helped lead a mobile team to Ukraine. You treated hundreds of patients and trained thousands of Ukrainian medical staffers. What was that like? Did it kind of help you de-stress and give back? And why did you go?
Well, I went because the problem was there. I went because I was trained for it.
And this was in 2022 when the
problem was right
after. This is when it was a really big problem to start, not a tiny problem, huge
it was
problem.
In April, for the month of April 2022. So the problem was there. The experience that I had was unique, having been there before. And as D. Smith, my boss, says, Doc, we were born for battle. He and I. He also, by the way, refers to me as Kaiser Soze.
Yeah. Usual suspect. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I take that as a compliment, some strange, twisted way. But at any rate, the problem was there. They needed to be addressed. There weren't that many people that could do it and get freed up to go. And as it happens, I thought that the unique need of these internally displaced people, IDPs, horrible, a sterile term for people that have been disrupted from their lives, their homes ripped out from under them by a fanatic and his myrmidons, have to get on a train and go 900 miles and hope that someone will be there to take care of them. And the Ukrainian people were, but there wasn't a system of physicians, nurses, firefighters to take care of them medically. So that's what we went to do. And Shark, it was one of the most gratifying experiences of my life. These people, they're the real heroes, not us for going over there, but they're the real heroes. Their courage, bravery, and tenacity is without peer.
One of the things that really stood out from your speech was how much actually translated from healthcare to corporate life. What lessons can people in the corporate life take from your experience in the medical world in order to leverage to deal with burnout and better leadership? Because again, you talked about leading as a noun. And a lot of what you spoke about on stage, specifically about leadership, could apply. And yours just like blew me away. It was fantastic. The advice you gave that didn't involve talking about tourniquets and slings and everything else all day long.
Well, a couple of things. One, regardless of where you are, regardless of what you do, regardless of what current position you're in, don't aspire to become a leader. You already are leading your life. So embrace the fact that you're a leader. Embrace the fact that, when you swing out of bed in the morning, the evening, the night, when you're getting ready to go to your job or your life, or take your kids to a soccer, lacrosse, football game, whatever it is. When you plant your feet, say, I am a leader. I am going to lead today. And then inspire other people to do that, to feel the same way, particularly your kids, but the folks you work with on a day-to-day basis. As I said, culture is not the words on the walls, it's the happenings in the halls. Now, with those three things in mind, I think you have to think about leading in a radically different way. You have to think about, well, the boss doesn't have what I want. I have what I want. The answer is not above me. It's within me and among us, the team of people. You have to act on that within a week. My hope would be that after this podcast, anybody who listens to it, whenever they listen to it, could be 3 years from now, listens to it and acts differently in some way, large or small, differently. Because us as human beings, if we don't change our habits within a week, we're not going to change them. We're going to have a nice set of slides or a memory or a chuckle about what Shark said and what Doc said and all that. And then third, innovate, because the way we're working isn't working. We've got to change the way we're working. And that doesn't take getting into the C-suite. It takes the team, the we suite, being able to say, we can do this. We have it within us. And when you do all those things, it really magically changes from dropping the word someday out of your vocabulary. Someday I'll be a leader. Someday I'll be the boss. Someday I'll be the top salesman. Someday I'll be in the C-suite. To today, with an exclamation point. Today. Go act today. Lead today. Lead yourselves, lead others. Teach your kids to do that. Teach every person, no matter, they may be housekeeping, cleaning the floors of wherever it is that you work, but say hi to them, embrace them. How you do it? Not embrace them like bring you up on charges. We've all seen that. But embrace their humanity, embrace the love they have for what they do and how you might be able to help them today.
Doctor, I ask this of everyone who appears on the show. Now, you're in Wyoming, and there's not a lot of these there, but do you have a favorite kind of shark and why? One of the great travesties is that Roger Goodell never put a team in for the Sharks. Maybe with a guy like that whose middle name, you have to look it up, is Stoko. Roger Goodell's middle name is Stokoe.
Well, the players might come up with a different middle name, but we won't go there.
Exactly. Middle finger, but that's another story. Yeah.
Just to be clear to your audience, as they probably already know, we didn't prep these questions.
Not at all.
This is no surprise to you or anyone who knows me. Great white, the big dog, the alpha predator, if you will. Not that that's what they primarily do with human beings. You know that much better. You swum with them before and interacted. But, if you don't want to be your big dog, if you don't want to be your great white, if you don't want to say, you know what, I may be the smallest great white in the history of mankind or shark kind, but I'm going to be my biggest great white. So that's my sense.
Very true. All right. Well, Thom, it's that special time in the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Absolutely.
All right. These touch on football a lot. All right. Number 1, better movie about pro football. And I got 2 that I think you'll appreciate. North Dallas 40 or Brian's Song.
Well, they're both phenomenal. And I knew Brian Piccolo and Peter, Peter, again, who wrote North Dallas 40. If you want the raw veracity of what the NFL particularly was like then North Dallas 40 is going to tell you this is the underside. This is a soft underbelly. This is the raw reality of dealing with it. Because we don't call our players retired players. The NFL calls them that. Why? Because most of them didn't retire. They were retired. They were told, go clean out your locker, get out of here. Love you. You've been great, but you no longer are welcome on these premises. And I tell NFL doctors that all the time. What if somebody said that to you? What if somebody said, you've been a great doc, but you're done. You're out of here. Their eyes, it's, like they've just seen a great white right in front of them. So for that's the reality. For the courage, the integrity, the sense of brotherhood and camaraderie, and it was well played in the movie as well. But the book you've read the book, is
I have.
yeah, it's
Which would you rather watch if you had one to pick?
well, I think if I could only pick one, I'd pick Brian's song, because I usually am not looking for. I mean, I pretty much know the soft underbelly, um, but I love to be inspired, and I think Brian's story and and the possibilities. I mean, he might not have passed away, at least from that cancer now, with newer therapies that we have. So if I'm usually looking for inspiration, I'm always looking for great performances, but both movies had that.
All right, number 2, Hanover College or Duke University?
Well, it's a great question. Both are elite level institutions where not everybody who wants to go there has the chance, the opportunity to go there. Without Hanover, there wouldn't have been a Duke, meaning if I had not done well at Hanover, I wouldn't have gotten into Duke. But at the same time, at Duke, we call it 4 for 40. Whether we're recruiting athletes or whether we're recruiting medical students or residents or anything else. And of course, what that means is, you're going to spend 4 years here, but for 40 years, that name Duke is going to open doors. People are going to say, you went to Duke? And I'm widely known as the only mistake the Duke Medical Admissions Committee ever made. I actually showed up I spent more time riding my horse and fishing than I did in classrooms at Duke. I showed up for graduation and my classmates said, are you still here? I didn't know you were still in medical school. But no, you can't argue with Duke University. Certainly coming from a Hanover foundation, but it was and still is a transformational experience.
All right, number 3. It's a little bit of a softball question. Best guard of all time. 10-time Pro Bowler and Hall of Famer John Hanna of the Patriots, or, and you know who the or is,
Yeah,
6-time Pro Bowler, 2-time Super Bowl winner, and Hall of Famer Gene Upshaw of the Raiders.
Well, love them both. Loved Gene. He's passed away, as you know, but of course I got to choose Gene. I mean,
yeah.
he
was the one that got you in.
He's the one he called me and told me, you're going to become our medical director. And we've talked about this before, but people say, how do you get that job of the NFLPA's medical director? What kind of resume do I have to build? And I always tell them, you know what? I didn't get that job because of my resume. I got that job because Gene was my best friend. His youngest and my youngest were and still are best friends to this day. So don't build resumes, build relationships. And Gene was the kind of guy that, I went into his office, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months, had a really tough problem. I'd never been in his office before. And for reasons that you'll hear, I didn't go back since. But I sat down with him and I said, Gene, I got a really tough issue here. And I was smart enough to know I got to present Gene at least 2, preferably 3 solutions. So I said, here's 3 solutions. And I said, what do you want me to do? And he looks at me and he says, just go be Thom Mayer. That's why you are Thom Mayer. That's why I hired Thom Mayer. And I walked out and I called Maureen and she said, what did Gene say? And I said, I don't have a clue. But I figured it out. He was saying, I trust you. That's why I say innovation is worthless, but trust is priceless. And another quick one, we showed up for our first meeting at NFL headquarters after I became medical director. I'm very punctual. To me, lateness is a sign of rudeness. Gene wasn't that way. So 10 o'clock meeting, we're at NFL headquarters. We're downstairs at 9:38, 9:48, 9:50, and we're still not going upstairs. And we got to clear security to get up in the conference room. 10:12, we finally get in the conference room. We walk in. It's me, Gene, and Trace Armstrong, our president at that time. There's 32 NFL team physicians. Paul Tagliabue, who was the commissioner, that's how long I've been doing this. About 18 trainers and about 50 lawyers. And Gene looks around the room and says, we may be outnumbered, but we'll never be outmanned. And so for those reasons, no offense to John Hanna, a great, great man and a great, great guard, I'm going to go with Gene.
All right. So I got to back up one if this one's too political.
Sure.
But if he were your own son, Tua Tagovailoa, should he retire or should he stay? and play?
Yeah, that's easy. He should follow his heart. He should look in his heart and follow his heart. And you've heard me say this, but when my boys were younger, I used to tell them one more step in the journey of discovering where your deep joy intersects the world's deep needs. If he looks in his heart, talks to his family, and says, my passion, as DeMar said, my story is not finished yet. Beautiful line. I had nothing to do with that. He's got to do that himself. It's always the personal decision on the part of the player. That said, every player at some point in their career starts to think about what I tell them on day one, which is you're going to be a former football, we don't call them retired, former football player, much, much longer, and may have more significance in terms of impact on people in your life for that part of your career than you did when you played on the football field. And so I know he will make that decision. It will be the right decision because it's his decision, not anybody else's. And he'll follow his deep joy wherever it takes him.
One of the greatest quarterbacks that could have been if he had only had John Hanna and Gene Upshaw as his guards and a rest of an offensive line. My backup question was going to be one of my most stressful ones that I go through this practice every year, but I was going to ask you if you thought the Dallas Cowboys would ever win the Super Bowl again, because I've been crying about it for over 2 decades and I've given up on that. So maybe not in my lifetime, but number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
I'm going biscuits. We eat a vegan diet now, but there's nothing like, biscuits and cream gravy. It may be sinful, it may be bad for you, but boy, it is just a taste that, as you know, the smell brain, obviously you deal with sharks all the time, the rhinencephalon, the technical name for it, but the taste brain is the same way. There's just something that you smell them biscuits, you smell it, and it's them biscuits, by the way. I know
Exactly,
you know. Yeah. You smell them biscuits, and you're going to be having a good day.
Well, so Thom, where can people find out more about you, learn more about what you're doing, keep up with your speaking events, and so much more?
Well, Executive Speakers Bureau handles my work, and they do a great job. So on their website, executivespeakersbureau.com. My email, and it's not a website, I'm not trying to sell anybody anything, is just ThomMayerMD.com. If I can help, reach out and we'll get a conversation. We'll get a phone call, a Zoom, whatever works. It's subject to my schedule, which is sometimes torturous, but I love to help people. The question I almost never get asked is, what's your deep joy? My deep joy is helping other people find their deep joy. And if I can do that for your listeners, I'd love to do so.
Thom, thank you so very much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
It's a pleasure, and trust me, the honor is all mine. Thanks, brother.
Well, despite my raspy voice, there was my conversation with Dr. Thom Mayer, the medical director for the NFL Players Association, the executive vice president of leadership for LogixHealth, founder of Best Practices, Inc., the 2018 winner of the James D. Mills Outstanding Contribution to Emergency Medicine Award, nominated to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, named by USA Today as one of the 100 most important people in the NFL. He's led a mobile team to Ukraine to train medical personnel during the war. He served as the command physician at the Pentagon Rescue Operation, has served on 3 Defense Science Board task forces advising the Secretary of Defense, an author of books including Battling Healthcare Burnout, and he was the originator of the NFL Concussion Guidelines program. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, so many notes I could call out from this show, but I'll just grab a few here. Loved his comments about comparison. Great lesson. He reminds us that your biggest competitor is yourself. It's what you could be, but have not yet done. So very true. Second, we all have a lot to deal with daily and it's stressful, but don't get burnout. I love the re-emphasis, if you will, that he reminds us when thinking about doing the best you can. Do the best you can. Put the emphasis on you when dealing with it, and don't ever let it overwhelm you. Do the best that you can. Don't think about what someone else can do. Do the best that you can. Third, love his comments about C-suite to the we-suite and changing culture with leaders. He says, don't aspire to become a leader. You already are. And for all of us, when should you start? Start today. He reminds us that culture is not the words on the walls, but the happenings in the halls. Want to change that culture? Then go act today. Change someday to today. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time, and I'm so thankful to everyone who listens. I'm going to get my voice back again soon, and I thank you for your patience. Join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.